G'day, it's Jamie and welcome to Where's My Yowie. Today I'm reading a couple of articles written by Naturalist H.J. McCooey on his Yowie sighting in 1882. So we'll get into it. The first article is from the Australian Town and Country Journal, Saturday, 9th of December 1882, titled The Naturalist, Australian Apes. Reports occasionally reach us through the medium of the press of strange animals of the monkey tribe being seen in different parts of the colony. But such reports seem to attract little or no attention, and in many instances the truth of them is gravely doubted, if not entirely disbelieved. The general belief among Australian naturalists seems to be that the nearest approach we have in this colony to the monkey is the native bear. Now, I am in a position to state, and if necessary prove, that the more egregious and unpardonable error does not exist. The fact of no apes being found in the Sydney Museum does not justify us in rushing to the conclusion that there are none in the colony, for it is extremely improbable that any ape will be foolhardy enough to present itself at the museum to undergo the somewhat delicate operation of stuffing. And beyond the fact that there are none to be found in the Sydney Museum, there is not one scintilla of evidence to prove that they are not found in the colony, whilst there is abundance of evidence to show that they are. A few days ago, I saw one of these strange animals in an unfrequented locality on the coast between Batemans Bay and N.S.W. My attention was attracted to it by the cries of a number of small birds which were pursuing and darting at it. When I first beheld the animal, it was standing on its hind legs, partly upright, looking at the birds above in the bushes, blinking its eyes and distorting its visage and making a low, chattering kind of noise. Being above the animal on a slight elevation and distant from it, less than a chain, I had ample opportunity of noting its size and general appearance. I should think that if it were standing perfectly upright, it would be at nearly 5 feet high. It was tailless and covered with very long black hair, which was of the dirty red and snuff colour around the throat and breast. Its eyes, which were small and restless, were partly hidden by matted hair that covered its head. The length of the forelegs or arms seemed to be strikingly out of proportion with the rest of its body, but in all other respects its build seemed to be fairly proportional. It would probably weigh about 8 stone on the whole. It was a most uncouth and repulsing looking creature, evidently possessed of some prodigious strength, one of which I should not care to come close quarters with. Having sufficiently satisfied my curiosity, I threw a stone at the animal, whereupon it immediately rushed off, followed by the birds, and disappeared in a ravine which was close at hand. I do not claim to be the first who has seen this animal, for I can put my finger on half a dozen men at Batemans Bay who have seen the same, or at any rate an animal of a similar description. But I think I am the first to come forward in the columns of a newspaper and give publicity to the fact of having seen it. I may mention that a search party was organised at Batemans Bay some month ago to surround the locality of the supposed ape frequents and shoot or capture it. But the idea was abandoned in consequence of the likelihood of gun accidents. And I may further state that the skeleton of an ape, 4 foot in length, may be seen at any time in a cave 14 miles from Batemans Bay in the direction of N.S.W. Yours truly, H.J. McCooey. Okay, so the second article is published in the Seymour Express and Goulburn Valley, Avenel, Greytown, Nagambie, Telerook and Yowie Advertiser, dated Friday, the 2nd of November 1883, titled Australian Apes. A correspondent of the Sydney Town and Country Journal writes as follows on the above subject. A telegram from your Blaney correspondent appeared in the evening news of the 2nd instant and also in the Town and Country Journal of the 6th instant, announcing the fact that a strange animal like an ape has again been frightening the residents on the road from Orange to Bathurst at a place called The Rocks. Several ineffectual attempts have been made to secure it. Now, it is probable that you and many of your country constituents may remember that in your issue of December 9th, 1882, I gave a somewhat lengthy description of a large ape, or yahoo as the animal is called by bushmen, I had seen a few days previously in a rugged mountainous locality on the coast between Ulladulla and Batemans Bay. My article called forth no comments that I'm aware of from your country readers, which may be accounted by the fact that the presence of Indigenous apes in this colony is so notorious that the announcement of one being seen is not looked upon by bush residents as at all extraordinary. But strange to say, Mr. Ramsay, curator of the Australian Museum, disbelieves in their presence. Not because it is impossible for apes to be in the country up to the date without being captured, but because of deficiency of food, plants for them to exist upon. Now, with all due respect from Mr. Ramsay's opinion, with due respect for him as an eminent scientist and an enthusiastic seeker of truth as a naturalist, I submit and think I shall be able in brief to prove to the satisfaction of everyone who is not blindly sceptical that the position taken by the curator of the museum is absolutely untenable, and there are Indigenous apes in this colony, that they have been frequently seen in the Buttawong Mountains, in the Gingera Mountains, and in the Abercrombie Mountains, at Batemans Bay, at Mount Macdonald, and on the Guy Fawkes Road between Armidale and Grafton. That apes were known to the Aborigines of this colony and were dreaded by them, long before the museum was founded in Australia or the white man crossed the Murray. And that one was actually captured and killed near Braidwood, with the memory of persons still living. The curator of the museum last December offered me a bonus of £100 if I brought him either alive or dead an Indigenous ape, and I think it is highly probable that before many months elapse, I shall be in a position to claim his bonus. In conclusion, allow me to state that on this occasion, I sincerely hope this subject will be fully and properly ventilated in the columns of your journal, and that any and all of your readers who throw any farther light on the subject will have kindness to do so. Okay, so the next article is from the Australian Town and Country Journal, dated Saturday, November 3, 1883, titled The Naturalist Australian Apes. In this article, I propose to show that the position taken by the curator of the museum in regard to the presence of Indigenous apes in this colony is wholly untenable. His argument is this: that there are no fruits or food plants in Australia, there can be no Indigenous apes. Now, I readily admit that this argument would be of some weight if no ape had ever been seen in the colony, or if it were satisfactorily proved that without fruits or food plants, it was impossible for the Australian ape to exist. But when it is notorious that apes have been seen in all parts of the colony at different times and by different persons, and when it is not shown that fruits or food plants are absolutely necessary for their existence, the curator's argument becomes illogical and must of necessity fall to the ground. Mr. Ramsay seems to think that the Australian ape should live upon the same kind of food as the Asiatic or African ape. I reply, it is not all that necessary that it should. when every or nearly every animal, bird, and insect known in Australia differs so widely and extraordinarily from animals, birds, and insects indigenous to other parts of the globe? Would it be all that extraordinary to find that the Australian ape differing from Asiatic or African ape? Most certainly not. And the contrary, it is more probable that the Australian ape differs as widely from the African as the kangaroo does from the buffalo, the dingo from the lion, or the laughing jackass from the nightingale. Therefore, I submit that it is quite probable that the Australian ape exists and lives upon food different to that which apes of other countries exist upon. It may be the leaves of certain trees and on grass and herbs like the native bear and possum. For my own part, I am strongly inclined to believe that the Australian ape is carnivorous and that it subsists on birds' eggs, mice, etc. This belief is strengthened by a fact known to everyone who has seen these strange, uncouth animals, that all birds regard them with deadly enmity and attack them with implacable fury. In fact, it was the deafening outcry of a flock of birds that drew my attention to the ape I saw near Batemans Bay, and I observed at the time that there were numbers of nests in the vines and bushes immediately above where the ape stood. In closing this article, I wish to assert emphatically that there is not a scintilla of proof before us to show that fruit is necessary to the existence of the Australian ape, that there is not one scintilla of evidence to show that it does not live on leaves and herbs, or that it is not carnivorous, and that the proofs I shall shortly bring forward will conclusively demonstrate that the Australian ape is something more than a myth. Faithfully yours, H.J. McCooey, Survey Camp, Mandurama, October 22, 1883. Okay, so the final article is also from the Australian Town and Country Journal, dated Saturday, 24th of November, 1883, titled The Naturalist Australian Apes. In your last issue, and under the head, The Naturalist, you publish a letter signed H.J. McCooey, having reference to Australian or Indigenous apes. Allow me to add my testimony to that of Mr. McCooey and to support his theory to the effect that there are Indigenous apes in this colony, although rarely seen. An animal resembling a human being and covered with long hair has several times been seen about 4 miles from here. News was brought in a short time ago that it had been seen close to the township, and a party immediately started out in pursuit. Although they failed to see or hear anything of the animal, they discovered in the dust and other soft places in the bush the impressions of what appeared to be human hands. One of Cobb & Co.'s male coach drivers, asserts that with the utmost pertinacity that about 2 years ago, when at Cullen Bullen Post Office, 12 miles from here, he saw an animal exactly like a human being and covered with long shaggy hair cross the road in front of his coach and leap a fence with the greatest of ease. It then disappeared in the darkness. Signed, Richard Buckley, Carpety, October 24. Well, those articles are really interesting. I like how that the museum guy just refuses to believe that because no one's captured one, they're not, and they haven't got fruit or anything like that. It's like, it's classic. Yeah, because they haven't seen one, they don't exist. Well, that's wrong. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll get back to you all next time. Bye.